Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
The G20 group met in Johannesburg, South Africa. This meeting was a very important event. It was the first time that this big group of countries came together in Africa. For South Africa, it was a special moment. The country felt proud to host such an important summit. South Africa led the G20 meeting this year. They had clear and strong goals. They wanted to talk about making things fair for everyone, which means equality. They also focused on sustainability, which is about protecting our planet for the future. These goals were important for Africa. South Africa wanted to show the world the needs of African countries. However, something big happened. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, decided not to come to the meeting. No one from the American government attended either. This was unusual because the United States is a very powerful country. At the meeting table, there was an empty chair. This chair was for the United States. Many people noticed it. The empty seat showed that something was different this time. President Donald Trump's decision to stay away made this meeting historic. It made many people wonder how the other countries would work together. Could they still agree on important things without the United States? This summit became a turning point. It showed a new way that countries might talk and make decisions. It changed how people think about world talks and diplomacy. This meeting in Johannesburg was not just another event. It marked a new chapter in how nations deal with global problems. 2. Why the president stayed away. President Donald Trump made a very big announcement. He said that the United States would not send any people to the G20 summit. This meeting was planned in South Africa, a first for an African nation. Trump's decision was unusual. It was the first time in the G20's long history that a member country fully decided to stay away. This meant no president, no minister, no official at all would attend. It was a clear sign that the U.S. was not going to be part of these important talks. President Trump gave specific reasons for this boycott. He talked about the way white farmers were being treated in South Africa. He made claims of a white genocide happening in the country. He said this was why South Africa should not even be in the G20 group anymore. He called the whole event a total disgrace. However, the government of South Africa strongly disagreed with these claims. Many international experts also said that Trump's statements about a white genocide were not true. They showed that facts did not support these ideas. The Trump administration also had strong feelings against the summit's main goals. South Africa wanted to talk about diversity, which means having many different kinds of people. They also wanted to discuss equality, making things fair for everyone. Another big topic was climate change, focusing on how the world can protect itself from global warming. President Trump and his team did not like these topics. They have often been against actions on climate change. White House officials said they did not want the G20 to make a shared statement. They preferred a much weaker paper, just from the host country. Initially, there was talk that Vice President J.D. Vance would attend. He would go to South Africa to represent President Trump. This is a common practice for such large meetings. But 2 weeks before the summit was to begin, President Trump changed his mind. He made it clear that no U.S. officials at any level would attend. This cancellation meant that the United States would not be present at all. Its chair at the G20 table would be empty, marking a new chapter in how big countries work together, or sometimes choose not to. 3. Other leaders stay home. President Donald Trump was not the only leader missing from the G20 summit in South Africa. Many other important world figures chose to stay home or send someone else. For example, Chinese President Xi Jinping did not come to the meeting. China sent its premier, Li Qiang, instead. Sending a high-ranking official is a common practice for China at these kinds of events. Russian President Vladimir Putin also was not able to attend. He had an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court related to the war in Ukraine. Because of this, Russia sent Maxim Oreshkin, a top official, to represent the country. Some countries joined the boycott in support of the United States. Argentina's president, Javier Milei, is a known ally of President Trump. He decided to withdraw from the summit. Argentina sent its foreign minister, Pablo Quirno, in his place. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, also decided not to attend the meeting in person. She dispatched a senior minister from her government to represent Mexico. Other leaders also sent representatives. These included the President of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto, and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud. All these absences meant that about 7 of the G20's member states did not send their heads of state or government. This was a significant number, roughly 1/3 of the leadership usually present at such important gatherings. With so many main leaders missing, there were serious concerns. Many people wondered if the meeting could still be useful. How could the G20 make important decisions if a big part of its leadership was not there? The purpose of the G20 is to solve global problems together. To do this, countries need to agree on things. But with 1/3 of the top leaders absent, reaching agreements became much harder. This situation posed a big challenge. It made people question the future of the G20 as a forum for world leaders to work together on global issues like the economy, health, or climate change. The lack of full participation put the meeting's power and influence at risk. 4. Problems with money and trade. Relations between Washington and Pretoria were not good. Over time, they became much worse, reaching a very low point since apartheid ended. The relationship had problems starting in 2022. South Africa did not agree with the United States on some big world issues. For example, South Africa did not vote against Russia at the United Nations. It also chose not to join other Western countries in punishing Russia. South Africa also kept strong ties with China. These choices created tension with the United States government. A very important conflict started in January 2024. South Africa took a legal case against Israel to the International Court of Justice. South Africa claimed that Israel's military actions in Gaza were very serious. The U.S. President, Donald Trump, strongly supported Israel. This legal case made the disagreement between the U.S. and South Africa much worse. Because of South Africa's actions, President Donald Trump decided to stop all U.S. aid to South Africa. This happened in February 2025. This decision included stopping long-standing and important programs like PEPFAR. PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, had been a key part of U.S. and South African cooperation for many decades. Ending this aid affected many people and showed how bad the relationship had become. After that, the Trump administration added economic pressure. In April 2025, new tariffs were placed on goods coming from South Africa. President Trump announced a 30% tariff on South African products. This was the highest tariff put on any nation in the sub-Saharan African region. Before this, South Africa had a special trade deal that allowed its goods to enter the U.S. without extra taxes. This helped South Africa's economy. The new tariffs made it much harder and more expensive for South Africa to sell its goods to the U.S. market. These tariffs had a clear purpose. They were a punishment for South Africa's foreign policy choices, especially its position on the Gaza conflict and its stance on Russia. The economic penalties also hurt South Africa's economy at a critical time, just before it hosted the G20 summit. It also sent a message to other countries that going against the U.S. could lead to economic difficulties. 5. A plan for the planet. The G20 summit in Johannesburg faced many challenges. The United States did not send any representatives. Other important leaders also stayed away. Many thought the meeting would not be successful, but something surprising happened. The leaders present were able to create a joint statement. This statement is called the Leaders' Declaration. It was a big success, especially because some countries were against it. Donald Trump, the U.S. president, did not want any such statement. He wanted only a simple note from the meeting chair. But the leaders worked together and made a full declaration. This showed that countries could still agree on important things, even without all members present. One of the main topics in the declaration was climate change. This was a very important point for many countries. President Trump's government often disagreed with strong climate action. However, the declaration spoke strongly about fighting climate change. It confirmed the goal to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. It also said that countries should try to keep it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The leaders agreed that greenhouse gas emissions must be cut quickly and a lot. They also called for a plan to stop using fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are things like oil and gas, which cause a lot of pollution. The declaration said that fossil fuels are the main reason for global warming. The declaration also talked about money to help developing countries. These countries need a lot of money to deal with climate change. President Trump's government often disagreed with strong climate action. However, the declaration spoke strongly about fighting climate change. It confirmed the goal to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. It also said that countries should try to keep it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The leaders agreed that greenhouse gas emissions must be cut quickly and a lot. They also called for a plan to stop using fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are things like oil and gas, which cause a lot of pollution. The declaration said that fossil fuels are the main reason for global warming. The declaration also talked about money to help developing countries.
These countries need a lot of money to deal with climate change.
Experts said about $2.85 trillion would be needed by 2030. The G20 leaders agreed to look at this problem. They also addressed how to help developing nations with their large debts. South Africa, as the host country, made debt sustainability a very important part of the meeting. Beyond money, the declaration also included language about making things more equal for all people. It also talked about helping women achieve equality and looking at how artificial intelligence could help poor nations. The leaders wanted to reform global money systems to better help poorer countries. To make sure the declaration was strong, South Africa did something clever. They released the declaration at the start of the summit. This happened on the first day, a Saturday. Normally, such a statement is released at the end. This early release helped to prevent problems. It meant that no country, like the United States, could try to change or weaken the words later. This move showed strong leadership from South Africa. It proved that international cooperation can move forward. The summit ended with a clear plan for the planet. 6. A new way for the world. The G20 summit in South Africa opened a new way for countries to work together. China used this important moment to show itself as a good and reliable partner. China's Premier Li Qiang clearly stated that his country was committed to working with others. He emphasized that China believed in all nations joining hands and finding solutions together. This was a clear message, especially when compared to the America First policy of United States President Donald Trump. With the U.S. absent, China took the chance to portray itself as a stable and trustworthy leader in global talks. China wanted to show a different approach, one that values cooperation over acting alone. Many people who study world affairs noted that the world was changing. It was no longer a world led by just one country. Instead, it was becoming a world with many centers of power. This means that several strong nations and groups now hold important positions. They share in making big global decisions. This was a big change from how things used to be. The summit showed that no single nation had to control everything for progress to happen. This move towards more shared power was very important for how countries would cooperate in the future. It suggested that power would be spread out, with many voices shaping global paths. South Africa also brought an important idea to the summit: Ubuntu. This is an old African philosophy. It means I am because we are, showing that all people are connected. Ubuntu talks about shared responsibility and looking after everyone's well-being. This idea was very different from President Donald Trump's America First approach. The America First policy focuses mostly on the interests of the United States, often suggesting that a country should act alone and prioritize its own gains. In contrast, the joint statement from the G20 meeting showed the spirit of Ubuntu, talking about fairness, shared goals, and helping all nations, especially those in need. Most importantly, the G20 summit clearly showed that global business and important world cooperation could continue. This was true even when the United States was not there. The other countries agreed on big goals, like fighting climate change and helping developing nations with their money problems. They managed to do this without the U.S. taking part. South African Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola said something strong. The G20 should send a clear message that the world can move on with or without the U.S.
This was a powerful statement. It proved that nations could work together and make very important decisions, even if a major power like the United States chose to stay away. This new way of working together signaled a big change in how global relations might look in the future. It suggested a more balanced world, where many voices could lead, redefining what is needed for global progress. 7. The fight over the hammer. At the very end of the G20 meeting, there is a very old and important tradition. The country that hosted the summit passes a special small hammer, known as a gavl, to the next country that will host it. This act is a symbol. It shows the formal change of leadership for the G20 group of nations. For the year 2026, the United States was chosen to be the next host nation. Because of this, South Africa, which hosted the current meeting, was meant to give this important gavl to the United States. However, the government of President Donald Trump presented a very unusual request. They asked for a low-level diplomat to receive the gavl. This diplomat was an official from the U.S. Embassy in South Africa called a chargé d'affaires. This person holds a much lower rank than a head of state or a foreign minister. Normally, a country's leader or a top minister would accept such an important symbol.
President Ramaphosa of South Africa firmly said no to this idea. He explained that handing the important gavl to such a low-ranking diplomat would show great disrespect. He made it clear that he would not pass the baton to an empty chair. This strong statement meant he would not give the symbol of leadership to someone who did not have the appropriate high standing or to a space that felt empty due to the United States boycott. This disagreement quickly led to an awkward diplomatic standoff. It happened right at the closing moments of the summit. The two countries could not find a way to perform the traditional handover ceremony. Because they could not agree on who should accept the gavl, the special ceremony was called off for that day. Instead, officials announced that representatives from both nations would exchange the gavl at a later time. They said these representatives would need to be of similar and high ranks to show proper respect. A spokesperson for the White House later shared their view. They said that President Ramaphosa had not helped to ensure a smooth change of the G20 leadership. This added more tension to the situation. Finally, President Ramaphosa had to officially close the summit himself. He struck the gavl against its block, signaling the end of the meeting. Other world leaders came to congratulate him and offered hugs. In a moment that was quietly heard by a microphone, President Ramaphosa whispered, "It was not easy." 8. What comes next? The summit in South Africa finished. There were mixed feelings among the leaders. Many felt relief that a big agreement was made. This happened even though the United States was not there. But there was also worry about what would happen next for global cooperation. The meeting showed that countries could work together without the United States. This was a new and important event. It made many people think deeply about how the world works. The G20 countries agreed on important things, like fighting climate change and helping poorer nations with debt. This was a strong and clear message. It proved that international talks could still lead to good results, even with big disagreements. President Ramaphosa looked tired but proud. He quietly remarked that it was not easy to make everything happen. This success set a new example for global diplomacy.
Now everyone looks to the future with interest. The next G20 summit will be held in the United States. It will take place in Florida. President Donald Trump's government will be the host.
This brings many important questions. Will the new agreements made in South Africa continue? Or will President Trump try to change the global agenda? His government has very different ideas about global issues and how to work with other countries. The positive spirit of working together seen in South Africa might face big challenges in Florida. The past summit clearly showed how deep political divisions can be. Some leaders believe strongly in working together on big world problems. Others, like President Trump, prefer to focus on their own country's needs first. This makes it very hard for all countries to agree and move forward together. So, a very big question remains for everyone. Can international cooperation truly survive these deep political divisions between powerful nations? Will the G20 still be able to solve major global problems when countries have such different ideas about the future of the world? Or will the world become even more divided? What do you think will happen when the G20 meets again in the United States, given everything that has happened?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.